Hello, everyone. Once again, I am Matt. Look who's back. It's been a while, but look who's back. Joining
I,
me for our review of 28 Years Later, we got Geoff Alterman back, everyone. And I am so something to be talking to you about this movie. Geoff, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing better than you.
Yeah, that's pretty easy these days.
I'm
Uh, no, it,
doing good. I'm doing well.
I unfortunately had to miss out on my double feature today. It was supposed to be this and Bride Hard.
Mm.
Um, We will be having a review for F1. I have already seen it. However, Jeff's screening is next week, so that
I
review
had
will
I
be
had an
dropping
I had
out.
an earlier screening option and I mixed up the days, so I missed it.
Yeah. So it's okay, Jeff.
And the rep said, "Well, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
We have
There's
another.
another one next week. Do you want to go to that?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know if I'm available, but just in case, yes."
Yeah. But so you'll be seeing Jeff again soon, hopefully. It's gonna be an
Oh,
interesting next few weeks because we are in the thick of it. We are in the thick of the summer movie season. You've got the 28 years later, which we'll talk about in a moment here. Next week is Megan 2.0 and F1. The week after that is Jurassic World, and the week after that is Superman. It's just
and that doesn't
go
even
go go.
count like that. And that's just talking about potential reviews here. That doesn't even count like other big movies coming out. Like, did you know that there's a Pixar movie coming out this week
You
too?
mean that movie that they barely even
So
Elio?
yeah.
Yeah, it's a movie. It's
I haven't seen it.
I'm not on Disney's list currently, so I haven't seen it either. I know there was a
It's
screening
a
of it.
movie that I guess I haven't seen anything like about it. Maybe it's because I'm not the target anymore and I don't have ads on any of my services.
Maybe, but I don't hear anyone talking about this movie
They just started screening it like a day or
today.
ago
Yeah,
at the time, like in the last couple days, like at the moment of this recording.
yes. So it's crazy, but let's talk about why we're really here. We are here to talk about 28 days later, the third, first, whatever you want to call it, film.
28 years
Oh,
later,
excuse, 28 years later. Sorry, I I'll get into why I said days.
so you just
The
watched it.
first did I the first, third, whatever you want to call it. We'll explain that in a bit because that's gonna be a part of why we feel certain ways about this film. Um, in this series, Danny Boyle returns to direct, but he did not write this script. This script was written by Alex Garland.
Who also wrote the first film as well.
Yes, he did, and it's interesting. Um, One of us likes this more than the other, and I will let that person speak.
Yeah, I liked it more than him. Very clear. I didn't say that I love it. I think that I wish that at the time of this recording, I hadn't just seen the film, just because it's just kind of how the scheduling went. I wish I could have sat with it a little more. Maybe I'll feel a little differently with it as time goes on. But also, this is very much a part one type film, as it's been announced. Not that necessarily the average movie going public is going to be aware of this, but this film is the first in a proposed trilogy of 28 years later films. The second film has already been shot, directed by Nia DaCosta of the Marvels and Candyman and Little Woods fame. I like her work quite a bit overall. And that film comes out next year. And this one definitely, like I said, I think that it has, as far as movies that are being designed to come out one after another. This definitely feels like it has one complete arc for its main character,
Yes.
um, while then still doing like one of those like setups, like to go to a next movie. But it's not like a sequel setup. It's this kind of ends on this like cliffhanger type thing. And I don't want to talk too much about it because obviously that's the end of a film. I don't want to deal with that, but I want to make sure that people are aware of what they're getting into, considering how the first two films exist as sort of their own entities. 28 weeks later, of course, does rely on a little bit of knowledge, but also they kind of inform you about everything that happened in the first one, too. This one, it takes place obviously, 28 years later, as in the title, from the initial rage virus outbreak from the first film, and now they've been able to quarantine or kind of keep the virus under control just to the UK.
Yes.
Which I'd love to know how they did that, considering the end of 28 weeks later ends with them going buck wild around the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, I didn't. Fun fact, we'll get into that a little bit. Continue.
Yeah, so that's questionable how we get there, but I guess it's just, fine, we'll accept it for the sake of this story here. And it takes place about a father and son and mom who happen to live on an island that is safe from any infections because they have
Hmm.
to only be able to get on and off through one route is only accessible at low tide.
Yes.
Um, and it's
Which I found that interesting. I will add that.
there's a lot of really interesting, creative things that they do in this movie to kind of build out the world. Um, I feel as one day, or I guess we should just kind of like finish the recap of what the plot
Yeah.
basically is. It's about a boy whose father has taken him hunting on the mainland to help teach him
Rite of
how.
passage. Rite
Yeah,
of
rite of
passage.
passage sort of thing. And as soon as he feels he's able to, the son then decides to take his sick mom onto the dangerous mainland where all the infected are because she's not doing well. She's sick. And he heard that there is a doctor that happens to live out there in the
Who
woods
used to be a
that
part of this
might be able to
colony.
help him. That might be able to help. And it's about this journey that they go on. And that's just this one film. And it's really they do a really good job with kind of setting up the rules of the world, how they're able to keep people safe, etc. How they're able to expand on the different kinds of zombies, infected people there
Yes.
are. It feels very much like Alex Garland and Danny Boyle were they created this film that I believe I like, and most people I feel seem to like quite a bit more than you probably do. With the original, but
There's
it is.
another more famous critic in the area who I talked to after the film, and we had a small
Yeah.
conversation, and
Um,
he thoroughly enjoyed it.
yeah, but the original film, 28 Days Later, is monumentally influential, especially when it comes to stuff like just the fast zombie. Um, there's a lot of stuff from there that's really influenced, and here you could tell that this film feels heavily influenced from media that was influenced by his first film, almost like a full circle moment. I played a handful of different zombie film stories on video games, from The Last of Us, Days Gone. There's other ones like that where they have these different worlds that are all built out that take place years after an infection or the initial spread of something, and how are people able to survive after and build communities. And I'm noticing things that feel very much like, oh, I've seen something like this in one of these video games, and I love the way it was done there in those video games. And I'll say I think that they take a lot of those tropes in this movie, and to me, most of them they're able to weave into something that I think works on their own here. If not necessarily feeling particularly like original.
Fair, fair. So here, positives I have about this film are the world building, are the performances.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jodie Comer, who I'm a
Jodie Comer's
massive,
so good.
I'm a
She's
massive fan
always
of her.
great though, right?
Yes, yes, even she's always great in just about everything. I'm a massive fan of her. Alfie Williams, who's our lead,
Alfie Williams is a find. That kid's
that kid
great.
was great.
I
I
think
was
that
pleasantly
as you can
surprised
hear
by
from the
him.
story that we said from the brief little plot
There's a
summary
lot
here,
he's got to do
he's
in this.
really like, okay, we got Aaron Taylor Johnson and Jodie Comer and other big names in this film, but Alfie Williams is basically the lead.
Mm-hmm. No,
This
there's
is
no
this
basically
is
about it.
yeah,
He is the lead.
he's the lead. I mean, he's not credited as a lead, is what I mean, but he is a
Mm-hmm.
lead, not a co-lead. I think he is the
The
lead.
lead,
So
and he takes this great interesting emotional journey, and
this is
is the
definitely the most emotional film of these 28 films so far, I think.
If I could get through the other two, I might agree with you. But here's where I'll be honest. I tried watching the first film. I've said on this channel numerous times I consider myself a consummate professional. If it is time for a movie that I've never seen the previous iterations or installments in that franchise, I try to go back and watch them before. I tried 28 Days Later. I couldn't finish it. I never even got into 28 weeks later, and then I tried getting into this. I had similar issues with this film that I had to the technical aspects of 28 Days Later. This film is primarily shot on iPhone 15 Pro Max. I get that it's a stylistic choice, just like shooting in DV was back when 28 Days Later came out. However, I hate the fucking look of it.
I think it looks great.
There were shots I thought looked amazing. I'm not gonna, but
I think there's some digital stuff that I didn't like, but I mean, overall,
I'm gonna get to that in a second. There was a lot of digital CGI, some effects that looked like horrible, like a stampede of what was it, horses or deer?
Yeah.
That looked fucking atrocious.
Yeah, those are just like effects that are those are effects that are just not very good. That's true.
But I wanted to be able to enjoy this film more, and ultimately, for me personally, it wasn't until the third act where I got pulled in enough to be like, all right, I'm having a positive experience. It is when one of our top billed actors, I won't say which one, comes on screen, and it just that's when I feel like it really takes that emotional turn. Actually, a little bit before they come on screen, where they cover something that may or may not have been covered in a certain HBO zombie show, which I found interesting because I'm like, oh, we're doing this where we've just done this in other media recently. How interesting!
Not that these people happen to cross over at any point with that, but
right. But you get what I'm getting at. Like,
yeah, sure.
So I was just like, there's interesting stuff. There's enough going on and some really interesting stuff in there. However, the technical execution ruins it for me. I feel like story-wise, it is 3 different stories mishmashed together to try to make one coherent story by the end of it. I like each story enough separately on its own, and the third story kind of feels like the most natural connection to the second compared to even though even though it's not an anthology. It's not an anthology film. It's just it feels clunky to me to the point where it's like you have the father-son rite of passage thing. Then you have the breakage in relationship between father and son's taking his mother to try to get her better. And then you have this really strong final act where it's about accepting death and things of that nature. That was powerful as fuck.
Very, very strong stuff there. I do agree there in the end, and then it ends in a
really weird fucking way.
In a really weird way, it ends. That whole main arc ends and the story continues, and then it goes fucking hog wild for 2 minutes, and then the movie just stops.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is like the majority of this film. I feel like
it would have been better if it ended with the walk-in of that character at the end and then cut.
Yeah, because then they could have at least. It's hard to talk about without just straight up like spoiling it, but I do agree. I think that it makes a very bizarre
because I feel
switch
like
there at the end, and I don't know how I feel about it because like we can't because it's very clearly like, oh, this is tune in next time type of ending.
But I feel like when that character says, "You mind if we tag in or whatever?" If you just had that character saying that and then did a zoom in on that piece of jewelry that becomes so important from the beginning of the film, that would have been enough to have things click for you. Like, hi, my name is so and so. You mind if we tag in or no? Or if he says,
yeah, we don't need to go into detail on any of that stuff. I get what you're trying to say. We don't need to talk about
that's what I was.
it introduces an element that just kind of like is like, wait a minute, this feels like a completely different movie all of a sudden.
Hmm.
And so which drives me to, one of my issues is, like I said, this is very much part one. um I really liked this part one story. I liked what it did on its own, how it kind of like how it can stand on its own, and I enjoy what it's trying to do to set up, hey, this is how it can continue. It's just the sudden shift at the end makes it really hard for me, because to me, movies need to be able to stand on their own, because they've shot the sequel to this, the one that happens right after, so we're going to be able to kind of build right off of this. Cool. They haven't shot the third one there yet. I have an issue when it comes, when I watch like the Lord of the Rings movies. You can watch any of them, and it has a solid arc from beginning to end that works in just that film, while
Even
having
part one,
a
if you want to
greater
go something
arc.
more recent.
Yeah, so there's all these different part ones that have come out in recent years, and in different ways. Some of them, they some work better than others as a complete story, while also the story continues. While others are very much, it just like, I'm a fan of Fast X. That movie just stops. The
Yes,
movie
that
just
movie
happens
just
to stop.
stops in the middle of the
It
fucking
just
movie.
stops in the middle of something. And you're like, wait, what? And you know what? It's been years, and it's been a few years. They haven't even finished like figuring out if they're
They
going to
haven't
make
even
another one
started
or not.
filming.
Right. Like, you just see Vin Diesel post like a sad, like, I hope that we make it one day type post every so often. It's
or
crazy.
teasing that they're gearing up to make it. It could be
Yeah,
taken
so
either way.
as a result, this movie is, I can judge a lot of it, the way it makes me feel, the way I react to it, as one story. But it's not one story, is it? It has a continuation that you have to take into account because it's part of this movie.
And honestly, the way it ended didn't necessarily make me excited to check out the
It
continuation.
made me no, okay, so I'm super intrigued. I want to see what
Intrigued,
happens next. I
intrigued,
want to
maybe.
see it. The problem is, as I said, it just feels like such a giant shift after how this movie like was ending, that it
It felt
it
like we got a post-credit
pauses
scene
me.
right at the end of the movie.
Yes, it feels like that sort of thing, and it it makes it difficult to judge this movie on its own. It's one of those, like, I have a feeling for it now. This is how I feel about a lot of stuff that I feel, but this is how I feel a lot about stuff that I feel. That was terrible. Um, I feel a certain way about a majority of this film, and I can't. I feel like I can't settle on how I ultimately feel about the film until I can see the rest of the stories, to see, can this movie actually really function on its own once I see the greater tapestry, or is it always going to be a part one, in retrospect, will it always be a part one, like how I'm feeling?
And with that, Jeff, what would you say you give this film as a grade?
I like the film quite a bit. There are some flaws. Maybe I'll actually grow on a lot of the stuff that I find really positive about it. I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. I was feeling like a solid 4 for the majority of the film, and then this thing at the end and a couple other little things throughout made me feel like I need to drop it a bit. Not that, numbers are really, a great
Important.
way to um, gauge how art impacts you,
Yes.
but it's more of a, I like it. I like it a lot. I don't know if I necessarily love it yet. It's a flawed piece of filmmaking that deeply fascinates me. I really like the music. I actually disagree. Like, I do disagree with you about the way that it's shot. I really like the style that Danny Boyle brings. This has this crazy, unique
It
verve,
just
this
it
energy.
it seemed flat. That's my biggest. It just
Yeah,
seemed flat. That was
and
my
to
biggest
me,
issue with
I
how
don't
it
think
was
it
done.
felt flat at all, but I could see how it's this kind of filmmaking technique that I think is either going to vibe with you or it's really not.
Very much like
Clearly,
the first 28 days
yeah.
later.
Yeah, that movie, yeah, and I think it worked for me a lot more. There's a lot of fun stuff that I liked about it, and I was really pulled in on a lot of the more emotional things, even if it didn't necessarily all land. I think that some of the dialogue was a little clunky, while others might have felt like it was trying to be not that subtle in the emotional bits that it's trying to get across. But also, I think I've moved on I've moved beyond the idea that things need to be subtle at this point. We don't really live in a subtle
Mhm.
world anymore.
Right.
Sometimes you just need to say the thing to someone in order to get them to feel that. And I think that they did that here in ways that I really enjoyed. I don't love it. I don't think it's a perfect film. Rarely is a film perfect, but I liked it quite a bit. And I am interested to see what Nia DaCosta and crew do with the Bone Temple, the follow up.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, the reason, again, I'll say it, so my grade is as high as it is the performances, is the general stories being told in this one story. But like I said, they feel a little bit disjointed to the point where I was taken out. I didn't like the filming style, and so my grade's lower by a decent amount, not a major amount, but I gave it a 2. I'm not going to sit here and rag on it like I would some other films that I give it to, because there's a lot to like in here. There's one action sequence earlier on in the film, returning to their little safe haven, that I was on the edge of my seat for, and that was
Mm-hmm.
fantastic filmmaking in that moment. I
Mm-hmm.
loved it. However, I just didn't love the film. I really didn't, and I'm very curious. And I was talking to this other critic afterwards, and I'm like, I go back and think about things, and I've never really been a big zombie guy. The biggest zombie thing I ever got into was fucking iZombie. So that's a comedy first and
That's a
foremost.
CW show. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah. But
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying with that.
I'm like, we've done this season. Unfortunately, was more up and down. But even with The Last of Us, like anytime it's been more
I
zombie
still have to catch
focused,
up on it. Yeah.
yeah. But anytime it's been more zombie focused, I've been like, yeah, this is the what I'm pulling out on. I've liked more of the character stuff that we got,
Hmm.
especially in season 1.
Yeah,
So
I get what you mean. I
like,
disagree with you on some of that stuff, but also like
right.
it's clear that some of this stuff, it's clear from you trying to watch the other stuff from Danny Boyle too. It's just not necessarily the kind of filmmaking that jives with you, and that's fine. That
I'm
happens.
just talking about the zombie genre in
Yeah. Oh
general.
yeah. No,
So
I'm
that,
talking about both Danny Boyle's stuff.
yeah. I like a lot
Not
of
necessarily.
I like a lot
Yeah.
of Danny Boyle's other stuff. So that's
Yeah.
what.
I think it's that it has to do with the genre and how it all comes together for you, or does it?
Mhm.
Clearly,
Yeah.
I think that as far as let me make sure I got this right. As far as movies that Danny Boyle has made that you can find on a calendar, I think that this is not quite as good as 28 Days Later. I don't think that it's as good as 127 Hours, but I do think it's better than Yesterday as far as increments of time go.
Listen, I really enjoyed Yesterday. So that's my
I
thing.
did not.
Hey, I get it. But yeah. But that's it for our review, folks.
That's it.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to our sister channel, Watt Gaming. That is Watt Gaming, where our business partner Taylor Cleek puts all of the Twitch the Twitch VODs over there, and you can go follow that at twitch.tv/WattReal, like what's above Jeff's head right there. And like we said up top, we got a few reviews coming up, and maybe a podcast or two. We'll see. Time is a thing, and we don't always have a ton of it, but I'm gonna try to get a couple out in the next few weeks for you. But yeah, until then, folks, signing off. I am Matt. That is Jeff. This was another real review, and we'll see you next time.